When we have love, creativity naturally comes, whereas in a passive culture, which is characteristic of Vietnam, it is directed inward, toward the spiritual life.
This is what I like the most. Many times I get goosebumps when you tell the story. This is the third time I've heard it, but I still love it. I find it fascinating because I've always just heard people say this number is lucky, that number is lucky, but I never understood why. Then, when I got to sit with you, and you recounted the history, as well as the names of our regions, or the way our culture is used every day, I realized, oh, right? There are habits that we use every day, almost unconsciously. We think it's normal, but it unintentionally shapes our subconscious. And we unconsciously feel comfortable when using it in our daily lives. And now I'm also searching my way back. I think I've told you many times that now I've started wearing Vietnamese clothes again. And I've started coming back to Vietnam again. I'm eating Vietnamese food again. I have black hair again and I'm returning to nature again. And I don't understand why that suddenly is being reawakened. So, do you think the Shennong energy? From childhood just because a child, a Vietnamese child born and raised in Vietnam like me, or your children, or the future generation, being so close to this culture, means that we will also follow that path in the future. That one day, we will also shine in the way of rediscovering it. Especially now when many people are rediscovering it. So now I want to talk more about the part of how to share the most with the calm, the people around us, our community, to understand and love more about the wonderful beauty of the culture, the origins, roots, and history of Vietnam. Because for me, I feel I love it more now because I get to meet people like you and I get to hear. These stories aren't just from textbooks. History is no longer boring like that. Or learning about culture, it's no longer boring like that. So do you have any way to help the young people? For example, those who watch this video of mine and they start to become passionate about exploring their roots. In the way I was fortunate that God gave me this experience?
This is a rather broad topic. I think in order to love, one must have the opportunity to be exposed to it. After being exposed, one must listen and absorb it. And when we've absorbed it, we'll have an epiphany. Oh my God, our Vietnamese culture is so wonderful, so interesting, and we never knew about it. And the barrier that prevents us from knowing it has many factors. First, there's an inferiority complex about being a small, weak nation. We go out into the world, we see that everything they have is grand. It's enormous, beautiful, wealthy, and civilized. So we always think that our Vietnam is small, it's poor, and so on. And we equate it with the idea that ... All of Vietnam's values from thousands of years ago until now are also like that. That they are all at a level not worth paying attention to. And young people especially are very drawn to these glitzy things. This attracts them. Western culture is an assertive culture. It's a culture of conquering nature. Therefore, all of their achievements, they all carry an achievement of that conquest of nature. And conquering nature means that it breaks out, it conquers the living environment, and it builds up achievements within that living environment. Things like temples, palaces, all the way to spaceships, going to outer space, going to the moon, to Mars, and submarines going deep into the ocean, and so on. They explore that world. That is their forte. And the universe gave them that seed. The characteristic of that culture, that achievement, is that it conquers the senses. It conquers what the eyes see and the ears hear very powerfully. And it is these senses. The very function of the senses is also to be attracted by things that carry that material value. So it's very similar.
We call it immediate. It has an immediate result. People look at something, they hear something, and they go, oh, wow, immediately.
That's right. We look at such a magnificent castle, and we take our hats off. We admire it. But when we look back at Vietnam, we think, oh, Vietnam has nothing. And you have no idea that. We hide within the bronze drums, magnificent castles. But how can you understand the bronze drums? And to understand the bronze drums, it means we have to sit down, we have to read, listen, and then we must contemplate. We have to ponder a lot. Sometimes we have to spend many years before we can absorb it, before we can have an epiphany. Whereas with the other, we just glance at it and we're done. It ends, it defines and positions itself immediately. And with such an assertive, so-called civilization, that is a strength. Whereas with a passive culture, characteristic of Vietnam, of the wet rice culture, it is directed inward, toward the spiritual life. It creates magnificence within the inner self that we don't know about. We have no idea, and this generation might know, but the next generation loses it. And with each generation, we gradually fade, gradually, until we feel like we have nothing, nothing at all. And that's when we are drawn to the glitz and glamour of Western culture. And that is a painful thing for those who understand Vietnamese history and culture. This is a practical reality. I'll give an example. When I was a child, from the time I had consciousness and could record memories, to ponder on later, that started from the age of 3. So during that childhood period, I experienced so many temples and tombs that were beautiful, so magnificent in my inner life. And it was very simple. It was just the sound of birds singing, the sound of the wind through the leaves, the sound of a water drop, the sound of rain, the sound of thunder, looking at a river, looking at a field. But at that time, there was no consciousness, no ego, yes. It was just a constant experience like that. And it created an incredibly beautiful communion. Extremely happy inside. It was sparkling. And it never told anyone that it was beautiful and sparkling. Not at all. It just lived like that, day after day, as if it were a matter of course. And it wasn't just looking at a flower or a river or a distant mountain range that created communion. It could look at a clod of dirt, a pebble. Even looking at a pile of cow dung, it still found beauty.
I agree.
And it loved the smell of cow dung to the point that, even now, I still like cow dung, the smell of cow dung, because it is a fragrance. And if I say that, people will say I'm crazy, that it's absurd. Only someone who is experienced living in the countryside, who once loved herding cows, and loved people, loved the path, would also love the smell of the cow, love the smell of the cow's
Do you
dung.
like any smell? I like the smell of harvesting rice.
Of course, everyone likes the smell of harvesting rice.
The smell of straw. After the harvest, it has that. The smell of rice husks. I don't know how to explain it. It's inexplicable.
It's called the smell of new straw. You can't describe it.
It's very strange. Or a pile of straw after it's been dried. Climbing on it to play. Oh my God, I'm at a loss for words. How can I explain it to my children so they understand? They have to go to Vietnam to understand something like that.
So, I'm telling you, those are the castles, yes. Mysterious, but very real. It touches deep inside the souls of country children. But those country children, I was lucky that I could write it down in the form of an essay or a memoir. But other country children, they don't know how. They just know that they love it. They can't express it. So isn't it like they're hiding it away and keeping it only for themselves? If they tried to say it, they wouldn't know what words to use. So that is a civilization that is introverted. It is hidden. And it cannot be shared with the world. And try to compare those communions of a child's soul with the earth and sky, with nature, with grass and trees, with flowers and leaves, with dragonflies, with grasshoppers, right, with the stink bug. It is so sparklingly beautiful. So in this modern life, people who are called successful, at the pinnacle of society, can they rediscover that emotion, that feeling? Or do they crave it? Anyone who had it in childhood now craves it. They miss it. And they wish they could return to that inner child. There. So all those castles, those magnificent ones, even if they owned them, it still couldn't resolve the happiness, the true happiness within. So that is a pain, a great pain, for those who have gone through that experience, but cannot pass it on to others. If anything, it's just words that we express to each other. The rest of it all just sinks down. And when this society, Western society, reaches a pinnacle of civilization, then they encounter a spiritual crisis about love, about human relationships between their true selves and nature. Then they start looking to the east, and especially they search in Vietnam, a place, a country that is still poor, still mostly agricultural. So it still preserves those things. And in your opinion, you are optimistically believe that our country, Vietnam, with the trend that when people around the world reach a certain threshold, a certain point, they all realize that the only way is to return to find themselves and to harmonize themselves with nature, with the people around them. Only then can they feel happy. So, with that general trend, this land of Vietnam is converging many favorable factors smoothly to be explored. When the political foundation and the awareness of progressive people reach a point, once they reach it, then one day it will spread. And people will return to Vietnam. They will live again with the very traditional values of Vietnam. And perhaps there will be a return on a larger scale. The children of Vietnam who have traveled far and wide, who have learned so many good and beautiful things from civilized countries, from the nomadic culture. And when they come back, just like me, they bring back those essences to contribute to the country. A land that is favorable for the story of us returning to ourselves. And let's go back to the barrier for young people. As we said, young people are attracted by their five senses, more than by reasoning. But among them, there are also very young people whose frequency of energy and awareness is quite high. I have met some young people who came here. There were children who were only in 5th or 7th grade, but they had a love for the nation's history and culture. When I shared things with adults, they followed along and listened, and then they asked questions. They asked questions that made me realize they were absorbing it very well. And when I asked them, I was very surprised. So seeds like that are still being nurtured somewhere. It's not the majority. Of course, it's a minority. As for the young people who are still looking outward, that's also understandable because as they grow up, after they graduate from university, they need an environment to work well, to have a high salary, to be able to develop themselves, maybe to start a business. So they really need the values of the material life to support them. But then, at some point, when they feel that not necessarily enough, but their awareness reaches a certain point where they think, oh, I need to slow down a bit, stop, and go back. So I believe that the Shennong wet rice seed system, which has been around for 5,000 years or even longer, you could say even longer, has been passed down through to means. That is, in the genetic code, and in the material genetic code, and in a non-material genetic code, which is the seed system, in consciousness and awareness, so that gene is not. It's not. I think it won't be lost. And at a certain time, it will bloom again. When the right environment is there, it will bloom again.
I'd like to share with the sharing of someone who has lived abroad and has now returned and decided that they want to use their talent and humble efforts to contribute back to the community. I agree with you on that. If you don't go out, it's very hard to appreciate the things you've had since you were young, how you grew up. I told you, for example, when I go to Europe, I take a tour of art and culture, or the art and culture of that country. Then I see how much they love the paths their ancestors made, how their ancestors made it. They told me it took thousands of years for them to take each large stone to build the road. Then they told it. It was storytelling, a story that, through that story, I felt like I was reliving the history of their country. Or I went to a workshop that makes cheese. And they told me how many generations their family has been making that cheese. Then they experienced it with me. After that, they took me to the garden of tulips, for example, or the place where they make wooden shoes for the Dutch girls, or when I went to Italy, they taught me how to make pasta. All those experiences, I don't know why, when I experienced them, I always made a comparison inside, like, wait, Vietnam also has beautiful rural areas like this. We make rice paper. We make mats. I remember every morning waiting for the woman who makes hot noodles to buy them from my family to eat for breakfast with noodle sheets or kwang noodles in my hometown. Same with the lady who sells bun noodles. She makes them fresh and hot. You buy them to take home. And you can even see her making them right in front of you. She makes them, bags them, and you take them home. Or you go to the market, you see the aunts and uncles actually bringing vegetables from their gardens to sell. Back then, those things, for me, I never thought I could combine them to advertise and let the world know that we Vietnamese also have things like you. But after spending time abroad, now that I'm back, it urges me even more to think, wow, they still do those things. Just like how I lived here 20-something years ago, when I was little, when my childhood was like that. And as you said, what tradition seems to be now, it's urging me to come back to use my humble abilities and strength, the things I know, to solve the barrier issues. For example, language barriers, barriers of a culture, how to. Because when I bring my foreign friends back, they will always ask, why do Vietnamese people do this? They are very curious. But for them to be able to talk to someone like you, there has to be the part of interpretation in between. For example, I feel the responsibility of an interpreter has never been so noble. That is, we also have to study history, because any word that I'm about to translate for them wrong, they will completely misunderstand the context, the situation, the history, the culture. So when making these videos, I see the direction towards my inner self even more. So you were afraid I would get sleepy. But honestly, sitting with you, my mind opens up 1,000 more possibilities for me to become a version of a young person, better for Vietnam to go out into the world. Even if I use English, I will tell them that I am very proud to be Vietnamese. So, returning to as you said, the divine farmers will build and conquer. So let's go back to what I admire the most when you shared with me that. Have you ever thought about how nature, creation, created such beauty for the Vietnamese people? And after that conversation with you, I started to look back at all the beauty of Vietnam's nature. It's true, people pay money to come to Vietnam. These raw things, things that are still nurtured by nature, things that people, no matter how skilled, cannot build. How many tons of earth would it take to make such a beautiful mountain? For example, then I started to sit back and think, wow, there are countries that have to create nature to attract tourists. But for us, God has blessed us. For example, as you and I are sitting here, the breeze is so cool. It's so cool. People have to turn on so many air conditioners to get this cool breeze, or to have a conversation in a space as quiet as this. Could you share more about that part? About nature has given the Vietnamese people so much so that these young people can further appreciate that we have, as our ancestors said, golden forests and silver seas.
There is a very common feeling for all people in this world. When they are close to nature, they all feel a source of fresh energy, comfortable. It's not about the physical walls that only separate your physical body, but it also separates the spiritual space. So when we go out into nature, we look up at the sky and it's vast and endless. We look at the trees and leaves and we see something. Creation is so miraculous. For example, if you look in my garden, there are probably about a few dozen different types of trees. But the green of no tree is the same as any other tree. That's something you can't imagine. The design is so rich. I have tried to observe everything. All the trees in the garden have green leaves. Their shapes are not the same, of course, yes. But their green color is also not the same. They are only slightly darker or lighter than each other, but it creates a difference. And we can only cherish nature when we truly have communion with nature. We truly love it. So childhood is the period, the golden time, for that love to blossom most naturally, without needing education. It just needs parents to create the conditions. And during that time, sometimes education ruins it. Because I see that throughout my childhood, no one ever told me, you must love nature. Or, no one ever said, you must protect this or that. But because there was this love, this constant love throughout childhood, when we grow up, we cherish that. Like when I was little, when I was friends with my children. When they were young, it was very easy to be friends with them, because they were always clinging to me. So one day, my son Dai or Trung saw a swarm of ants at the base of the wall, yes, and with the neighborhood kids. Those kids were starting to kill the ants. As a fun game. Kids like to be mischievous like that. So Dai joined in, imitated them, and also killed the ants. So I came over Dai. I sat down and played. And I told a story about the ants. That these ants, after they went out to play like this, they went looking for food and they went to play. But they didn't come home at night. So their parents would be very worried. And when they couldn't find them, their parents would be very sad and cry. Just like when you go somewhere and you don't come home for dinner. Your mom will go looking for you at the neighbors' houses. And so we won't kill those little animals. And I remember just that one time. And from then on, as they grew up, my children never killed small animals, even in games like with the stink bug. There were some kids in the neighborhood who would catch it and break off its legs. Then they would tie it to a string and spin it around. We used to play like that when we were kids, but when I was little, I had an intuition that I could tie a string and spin it for fun, and then untie it and let it go. But other kids would break its legs. And I felt that breaking its legs was very, very, very cruel. So even that game, my kids wouldn't play. So I think that's a way we can educate children. Or another story. It might be a bit of a tangent, but it will come back to the story of nature, of being natural. Because in nature, the element of being natural is key. So one time, we had a pile of sand poured in front of the house to prepare for some construction. So Dai was very like other kids, he loved playing in the sand. Jumping on the pile of sand was so much fun. We knew that when we were little. Lying on the sand was so cool. Playing games in the sand was so much fun. So while he was playing so engrossed, it was time for dinner. Dinner time. So Dai's mom called out, "Go tell our son to come in for dinner." So when I ran out, I saw he was very engrossed, and luckily, at that moment, I stopped to observe. So I saw he was so engrossed that I didn't have the heart to interrupt his fun. So I just had a fleeting thought, just the act of stopping. The important thing is that we stopped for a few seconds, and with a feeling of love. It was always present for my child. So immediately, a creative idea popped into my head. Very quickly. That is, I ran over to play with him, also climbed on the sand pile to play with him, just for a little while, just for a few minutes. And after that, I teased him. Because we often tease each other, and when I teased him and I ran away, he would definitely chase me. So when he chased me, I ran into the bathroom, yes. That is, at that time, his mom told me to call him in for a bath and then dinner. I ran into the bathroom, so he chased me and I slammed the door shut, and that's how the two of us took a bath. So I interrupted one fun activity with another.
A new fun activity.
And it didn't cause any trauma at all for the child. So that's being natural. That's a very natural element. Of course, it's not like we can always do that. When we have love, creativity naturally comes.
That's a beautiful line. When we have love, we have creativity.
Love is the foundation of creativity. And going back to the topic, you were saying how to have a love for nature, right?
I want young people to cherish the golden forests and silver seas that our ancestors shed so much blood for, to protect for us today. But our ancestors also understood the things that made them fight until. The entire history of Vietnam has been a contribution. It has been a desire to leave something for the next generation. And I want the young people, now, when they want to find back this love, to have that first seed. Even if that first seed is from this video. I also hope that I can be the bridge. As a young person, another Vietnamese person sitting here to hear from you. But through the screen, there are 1 million, 2 million, 90-something million other Vietnamese people also listening together with me.
When I ask this question, it will create a knot a challenge for me. At first glance, it's a contradiction, because I am the one who is doing wood carving, and for wood carving, we need wood, and we have, more or less, participated in environmental issues. That love for nature was nurtured. And later, when, at the age when I was learning a trade and choosing a career, I couldn't fully grasp everything. I felt that this profession was suitable for me. I went to learn it and started working. And then I realized that this was invisibly participating in the forest issue. Whether that forest is in Vietnam, Laos, or Africa, it's all the same. And we have created a karmic account, a certain amount. So what will we do to make up for it? And luckily, my profession is traditional wood carving. So, when I use a piece of wood, just this much, sometimes it takes me a whole month to create a piece. There are even pieces that take me a year, and many years to create. So it's also relief for me that I haven't consumed too much of a quantity of wood. It's different from carpentry. And what will we do when we face that responsibility? First, we must think that we must bear some consequences, whether indirectly or directly, that the universe wants to happen to us. We must face it and we must accept it. And we must be happy, because we created that karmic account. If one day a flood sweeps us away, and in that flow, we know my karmic account is being settled, because we created it. We contributed to that story. And I have written some poems to share that thought. I'll read the poem Debt to the Forest. Touching the tree hurts with every cut. A fragile cut, a leaf's cut, a branch's bone. A cut where a bud is, a cut where a flower blooms. A cut calling the birds of the sky to chirp. A cut touching a day, hands tired. A cut touching a month, shoulders ache. A cut touching a year, back hunched. A cut touching a lifetime, bearing karma. A debt to people I cannot repay. A debt to the forest, oh forest, when will it be appeased?
I, on the other hand, see your sharing in a more positive light. Because I agree that what you do affects nature. But it also has to start with people like you. When we realize we are having an impact, we can share it with the people who come after us, so that they understand how to rebuild this industry. Besides using it, how do we rebuild it? This is a sharing from my experience. In Singapore, when I was there, their solution was to make builders like us commit to, for example, if on this area of land you build a certain number of trees, a certain number of houses, then for this area, for example, 100 trees could live here. Then you must build 100 trees to maintain the oxygen for the city. So they solved that problem by making the middle floor of each building a garden. And they squeezed it in, and unintentionally, they calculated it at 80%, but now it has increased to 200-something% or almost 500%. Just because they decided that the rooftop would also be a garden, the 7th floor would be a garden, the 4th floor would be a garden. They chose the numbers that the builders didn't like and turned them into gardens. So unintentionally, people will come there to work outdoors. I just shared with you those videos or pictures like that. It's true that they apply it to areas that others don't want, and it becomes the highlight of the building, and now it's almost replicated. So going back to the story of starting with people like you, because I see that when you share like that, other people, when they do their work, they will start to think, I've actually just learned something new from an artisan who has been through it, then we won't make those mistakes, or we won't fall into the trap of, oh, I don't know what I don't know and what I need to learn. So, my last question for you in this episode is only this, because after this, we will move on to share with everyone the painting of that you have made. This is a secret for you guys. You will know in a moment. Remember to watch the next episode.
My question from the beginning, there's still one more. Answer yes. That is, how do we atone for our sins?
That's right.
How do we atone for our sins? We have to borrow the works from wood to tell the story of the nation's history and culture. And through that, we spread many values of the divine farmer spirit of Vietnam. Yes, that's also the way we are doing, yes.
And we will continue to write the folk songs with wood in the next episodes, the next chapters with me. And Ni will take you on the next journey with Mr. Thu. Okay, we will move to a different setting. We will move to a different scene for Ni to introduce you more about the history and culture of Vietnam through the eyes of the artisans. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe if you like what Ni is doing. If you want Ni to interview another artisan, leave a comment below, and Ni will definitely go there to talk with other Vietnamese artisans, so that you at home through the screen can also have this experience. And the link in all information about the address of OLAC, Ni will leave in the description box. Please click, please join, and importantly, please come. Please come to experience these works with your own eyes, to have the experience of working with the artisans, and to hear from them directly, tell you the story of us Vietnamese people. After many years, I will see you in the next issue.
And keep going. 7 failures is not pressing my first furnace. The condensed milk can. Start with the condensed milk can, then add charcoal or a battlefield soldier. I returned as a wounded veteran. If I passed away, would there be anyone to continue